Hello and welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. I haven't done one of these for quite a while because I guess I just don't have it in me to try to put regular raid videos out. I'm not that invested in the game that I was able to do that. I mean, and other people have it covered better than I can. But I did come up with a clan boss speed tune that I wanted to share because it's one hell of a speed tune. I like it, and it has significantly boosted my damage even above what I was doing before. Now, the last video I did on this, I was doing 90 some million damage. Since then, I had switched to doing or using the ultimate Myth-Heiress comp with the 3-1 DPS using Jintoro, and was doing, before I came up with this one or worked this one out. It's not, I mean, I didn't come up with it entirely on my own. I'll explain. But with the old comp, I was doing about 104, 105 million damage on one key, which is still pretty damn good. I was happy with that. It's just I wanted to see if I could push it a bit further. I don't have Brockney. So until I can get Brockney and do an Infinity Shield team, I wanted to see if I could take what I had and push it further. So my ponderings was, could I use Elva to replace both Deacon and Heiress and free up room for another DPS? And I found a comp on it was a YouTube video. I forget who it was that did it, and there were some suggestions on there, but I couldn't seem to get them to work. I finally was able to, after some tinkering around in the speedtune calculator on Deadwood Jedi's site, and this is what I got in the end. And using Jintoro or Ninja or anybody else for that matter. The only time that this team actually isn't full auto is using Ninja against Nightmare and Brutal affinity difficulties rather. Other than that, against Ultra Nightmare with the Ninja version, it was full auto, and using Jintoro, it's full auto. And as far as I can tell, using anybody else, it's full auto against Ultra Nightmare, Nightmare, and Brutal. With Jintoro, Ultra Nightmare, Nightmare, Brutal. It's only Ninja that throws things off against Nightmare and Brutal. But there is a workaround for that too, and I'll show you. So this is the comp that I'm using, and I do not have crazy super in-game gear. So it's possible to push this even further, I'm well aware. And I don't have blessings, super duper maxed out blessings on everybody either. Elva doesn't even have any blessings on her. But the speed requirements are kind of extreme. This is definitely late game, maybe not super duper, decked to the nines late game requirements, but you're gonna have to have some decent gear in order to pull this off. The speed requirements, and there's not a whole lot of wiggle room here. There's some. You'll need to test in the calculator to see what you can do. And always remember, when you're putting your speeds into the speedtune calculator, deadwoodjedi.com, when you click on the speed to put in the speed, a sidebar will pop up that has a drop-down menu for gear. You need to put in what gear you're using because it can throw off your speed tunes if you don't. Because those little fractions of speed matter. So, but anyway, there's that little disclaimer there. Elva needs to be at 300. Demitha at 296. Like I said, some significant speed requirements here just to make it work. And then you've got to have a 3-1 DPS that will need to be at 260 for Jintoro, again, very little wiggle room, or 267 for Ninja and anybody else, as far as I can tell. Again, not a lot of wiggle room. Because of Jintoro's passive, Seeker giving him that extra little boost, he can be a little bit lower speed. In order to actually get any damage out of him, you're going to need good gear. There's no way around it. I mean, and like I said, I don't have crazy in-game gear on him. But, I mean, still 4,500 attack, 240 crit damage percentage, and 266 accuracy, so he's always putting that drop defense and weaken out. So, he hits pretty damn hard still. The nice thing, though, is that you can have a slower DPS. In this case, I'm using Dracomorph, who I found to be inferior to Jintoro, in my opinion, if you don't have somebody else to put that decreased defense and weaken out. If you have somebody else, then Dracomorph's fine. He would replace Jintoro and out-damage him. But if you don't have somebody else to do this, you're going to lose a ton of damage if you don't use this ability. So Dracomorph will lose every third turn an attack, because he will always have to, you will have to have him always using Baleful Eye, his A3, even if he doesn't need to renew those debuffs yet. He will still have to be able to use it. And because of that, he's going to lose a lot of attacks. So having somebody that, like Jintoro, this is probably the perfect setup, because Jintoro does the decreased defense and weaken on his biggest hit, so you can have Draco just bringing the pain, and he does bring the pain. I use Tell Hades' gear optimizer tool to get him in the best damage output build I possibly could without ripping the best gear off of every single champion in my entire roster. You know, this was the best I could do without sacrificing in other areas too badly. And it's still pretty damn good, because he hits pretty damn hard. But that is the limitation here, is that if you actually want your DPS, your 3-1 DPS to do anything, you've got to have the gear to get the damage output and the speed you need. And then Seeker, 200 speed's not too bad. You can get some damage output from him. Then you've got your slow DPS that you can just crank the damage up, because 188 is very doable and still have really high damage. And then Demitha and Elva, you get what you can. You know, Demitha doesn't even have 100% crit rate, and neither does Elva. I really don't give a damn. I just need them to have their speed where they need it to be. If you've got the crazy in-game gear to have much higher, you know, to have full crit rate and, you know, a damage build that still get the speeds you need, all the power to you. So, how does it run? As far as I can tell, and I've only run it about 4 or 5 times now, but it has had 0 issues every single time with this setup on full auto. In order to make it work, you just Demitha has to open with her A1, the 1-turn delay on her A2, so it goes, you know, priority 1 on that, and then priority 2 on the A3, so there's a 2-turn delay on that, and then Seeker opens with his A1, so there's a 1-turn delay on the A2, and then you're off. With Ninja, it's the exact same setup for Ultra Nightmare. And for anybody else, as far as I can tell, again, it is the exact same setup for Ultra Nightmare, Nightmare, and Brutal, and you can auto, full auto any of them. But with Ninja, there is a slight, or not a slight issue. You have to put a much higher delay on Demytha's A2 to make Ninja work on any of the uh, on Nightmare and Brutal. I had it at 6, 5 works as I've noted here, but you have to put quite a delay on Demytha's A2. It's still a 2-turn delay on the A3, but a 5-turn delay, or 6 works, but 5 gets you there. The delay on the A2 in order to sync up on Nightmare and Brutal. So the basis of this build is the Myth-Fu comp. I don't think I mentioned that yet. That's kind of the basis. But you know, it has to be reworked so much that you're basically creating a new tune. And like I said, I did find some guidance. I don't remember who I got it from, but so I didn't come up with this entirely on my own, but making sure it all fit together and using Jintoro and being able to use, you know, I got to this point with some work in the speedtune calculator. So if you know who needs to be thanked for helping me get here, you know who you are, or you know who they are. I thank them. I just don't remember the video I was looking at, and I don't have my history to look at it or anything at the moment either. But thank you, and of course to Deadwood Jedi and Hell Hades and everybody else that creates all these amazing tools that help ding-dongs like me be able to do shit like this. So, yeah, the only difference for the Ultra Nightmare tune with Ninja is that, and anybody else, again, as far as I can tell, it's anybody else, Ninja or any other champion that doesn't have any kind of turn meter manipulation on themselves. Because it seems, as far as I can tell, Ninja's A1, as long as you have this comp set up properly, it does not impact his turn meter enough to throw it off. It's just that Jintoro needs a little less speed because of his passive. And because of the difference in the clan boss's speed, that's why you need that delay on the A2 on Demytha for Nightmare and Brutal. Otherwise, it syncs up a little bit later, and you're good to go. So let's look at some screenshots, some other screenshots of how it works in the calculator. So again, the other thing that you really have to be careful of is your stun target. It's always the biggest issue with any speed tune is who's going to take the stun. Unless you have a comp that incorporates like Maneater and his ability to both put up unkillable and block debuffs, and be able to consistently have that in place to block the stun, that is always an issue. In this case, you could potentially come up with a comp that does that with Elva. It doesn't work on this particular speed tune. You don't need it to. You just have to finagle things so that the clan boss targets either your slow DPS, Demytha, or Seeker. It cannot be your 3-1 DPS. It cannot be Elva. So, as you can see here, I can go ahead and bring up another screenshot there that is just the lower one, so you can see Jintoro's and everybody else in there, and you can still see the the way the tune works. So you can see here that Jintoro goes first in the turn order, or if it's Ninja, Ninja will be going first in the turn order. And I've also got one with Rosin. Rosin goes first in the turn order. It's whoever your 3-1 DPS is. Will always go first in the turn order. They cannot be your stun target as far as I can tell. I have not tested this to see if they can take the stun and the tune still works. But my instinct is that if they take the stun, they're going to lose a turn, and it may not do it immediately, but it will eventually screw up the speed tune. And I don't feel like testing it because it is completely possible to turn the clan boss's attention elsewhere. So I'll go ahead and drop those back down. And the way that you do that, and you can see here, and again, I'm going to go ahead and bring up my go-to tune here. I guess before I get into that, I'll talk a little... No, I'll do this first, and then I'll get into damage. I'll finish up with the damage, because that's the main dish. Or no, that's the dessert. We're in the meat and potatoes right now. You don't get the damage until the end. That's the dessert. Those sweet damage numbers. So anyway, if you are familiar at all with how clan boss targets with a stun, then you should know that there are certain things it prioritizes. Weak affinity, certain buffs. If it can kill with a single hit from the stun, the stun attack, it will prioritize that. And the way that you can kind of convince it to target others is by doing things like using the steadfast mastery, which I'll get Elva up right quick. So you can see this probably is not the most optimal masteries, but the clan boss views the steadfast mastery as a buff, so that will kind of make it want to look elsewhere for a stun target. The other thing that helps with priority is your team order, and it does go or lead, your team leader, top, bottom, top, bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or as it is shown here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the team order. So, in this comp, since I have Elva, Dracomorph, Seeker, and Jintoro, who are all magic affinity, this doesn't perform as well against force affinity because of all the weak hits, but it still does it still one keys easily, so that's not an issue. It just doesn't do the fabulous numbers I'm going to show you in a couple, 3 minutes. You don't have to, with this setup, or any 3-1 magic champion as your 3-1 DPS should work fine, because Seeker is always there to be the first priority for stun. And with Dracomorph in there, either of them or Demitha are viable targets. Steadfast on Elva, it's going to look for somebody else to target. Jintoro's the last in line, and it has plenty of other targets with these three. There's no reason for it to go after Jintoro, so it doesn't. Again, I've only tested run this about 4 or 5 times, but it's gotten through full runs without any issue whatsoever. It always goes after one of these three. You should also be fine if you're using a Void Affinity for 3-1, because Demitha is there to take it as the priority target in that case. Where you might run into trouble is, again, if you're using rosin as an example, because rosin is force affinity, I believe. Now I'm starting to doubt myself. Yeah, he's force affinity. If you're using rosin, you might want to go ahead and use somebody like Geomancer as your slow DPS, so Geo can be their stun target. Because it was between Demitha and Geomancer, it will most likely target one of those two instead of Seeker. If it's Spirit Affinity, is what I mean. And if you're using someone like Bane as your 3-1 DPS, or possibly Farrakhan. Farrakhan the Fat is your 3-1 DPS. As far as I know, ally attack and counterattack should work just fine with anybody other than Ninja or somebody else who has turn meter manipulation on their A1. I don't think it would work with Ninja. You'd have to test it, because he gets that turn meter boost from his A1. But as far as I know, ally attack or counterattack champs should work with anybody else. So you should be able to do a Farrakhan and Feign build if that's what you have available. So you could do Feign as your slow champ or Farrakhan as your slow champ, either one. I would probably go with Farrakhan as the 3-1 DPS, because you're going to be getting back to that ally attack ability, and of course he's got HP burn poison and also can throw decreased defense, but you don't really need to worry about that. And even going at a 2-1 rate, he's going to get back to this. Well, it's on a 4-turn cooldown, so you just have to play with it to see where you got your best damage output from. But they should work. As long as you have... If you're using a Spirit champ for your 3-1, because that's who you have that does your best damage, against Magic Affinity, you would want to swap in another... If you're not already using another Spirit Affinity champ, you'd want to swap in another one as your slow DPS. And again, Force Affinity, if you were using Rosin, or if you were already using Geomancer, you might want to find somebody else, again, like Rosin, or possibly Drexthar, probably not, because of the HP burn. You don't want to overwrite Geomancers, but you'd want to figure out somebody. And the problem is, I don't have any super good Force Affinity DPS champions for Clan Boss. You might... Maybe somebody like Errol, maybe you could sub in. I don't know about him. But I mean, you could come up with somebody if you had to. But you would only have to worry about that against Spirit Affinity. And again, only if your primary DPS is Force Affinity to begin with. Or, yeah, Force Affinity to begin with. And likewise, Spirit Affinity against Magic. And, yeah, like I already said, you should be fine against Force Affinity, because Seeker will always be there to take the stun. So, Seeker should always take the stun on Force Affinity, or somebody else, your slow DPS, or Demitha. If in the case of, like, Dracomorph, same weak affinity there. Alrighty. So I think that covers everything as far as your setup goes, let's look at some of those tasty damage numbers. Now, this is what I was able to do with Jintoro and Dracomorph. That is the wrong picture. Ultra Nightmare, 123.77 million. Considering that I was doing around 104 to 105 million before, I almost put 20 million on top of what I was doing before. And again, I do not have crazy high-end in-game gear. You could easily squeeze several more million damage in there. However, I'm very happy with this, very happy, and I think these sorts of numbers are probably getting around the high end of what it's possible to achieve with a regular unkillable team. If I do not have Brockney, until I can get Brockney, I cannot test an Infinity Shield team. So all I can really do now is keep pushing damage on this team, because I don't think I'm going to put together anything that's going to do better than this as far as a regular unkillable team. I don't think even a double man-eater team can pull this off. I could be wrong. But I think what makes this a great comp is that you actually don't need super duper crazy high-end gear to make it work. You could easily get a one-key team out of this as long as you have the speeds and enough and reasonable damage on your 2 DPS champions. Seeker is in Toxic gear, by the way. I don't think I showed that. That's one of the reasons why he has pretty good damage numbers, too. So, yeah, he's in Toxic gear. So, yeah, it's a pretty damn good comp. I do have another image to show you against Brutal. I just did this a couple of hours ago. 143 million damage against Brutal Clan Boss. I mean, that's nothing to shake a stick at. And like I said, I have good gear, but I don't have crazy gear. Anybody that has these champions, and obviously not everybody's going to have Elva, Dracomorph, Jintoro, Myth-Heir, or Seeker, but that's always the way it goes with these unkillable speed tunes. But if you have Elva, Myth-Heir, and Seeker, you can put this team together. Because like I said, as far as I can tell, Rosin, testing with Rosin, because he does not have any innate turn meter manipulation of himself, like Ninja and Jintoro do. At 267, he syncs up just like Ninja does, and it syncs up fine for, that last image. That I did take that one to show that it syncs up in Nightmare, and it also, unless I'm remembering wrong, it syncs up in Brutal as well. And it's full auto for all three. Ninja is the only one who throws the thing off because of his A1, but even that you can get around by the longer delay on the A2 for Demitha. So this is if you have Elva, Demitha, and Seeker, as I said, this team is accessible. The speed requirements are high, so it's not something you're going to be able to do immediately, probably. It's going to take some time to get the gear you need to make it work and work well. But the fact that you can have 2 DPS using a team like this gives you tremendous damage potential. Far and above Myth-Heiress or the Myth-Ru Elva comp, or pretty much any of the other comps available that I've seen. And it's not out of reach, in my opinion, of most people. Again, you have to have Elva to make it work, Demitha, and you have to have Seeker. But like I also said, all unkillable speed tunes have champions that you just cannot replace in them. That, you know, those champions are the ones that those comps are built around. You know, with a few exceptions, you know, because Helikath and Tower, Roshkar the Tower, are interchangeable. They don't, work the same. And Helikath has extra bells and whistles that makes it better. But Tower still works, and there are other options there. You know, but, like Maneater, there's no sub really for Maneater because it's the unkillable and block debuffs that make him work so well in so many comps. Demitha works so well because not only does she have the block damage on a 3-turn cooldown, which is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, block damage abilities in the game, her ability to extend buffs so that when somebody like Heiress or Elva throws up that increased speed buff, it keeps getting extended and lasts, and is just perpetually on the team. It makes teams like the Myth-Heiress or this possible. So that's just an inherent thing for doing speed tunes. There's no way around that. But again, if you have these 3 champions, you should be able to put in any 2 damage dealers as long as you can get some halfway decent stats on your 3-1 DPS and a solid hitter on your slow DPS. You should be able to do pretty good damage. You should very easily do a 2-key and have 1 key within reach in a, a much shorter period of time. So that is the Elva Seeks Myth Speed Tune comp. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please hit the like button. I don't do a whole lot of Raid Shadow Legends videos on this channel. I'm going to be focusing more on RPG stuff. If you're interested in that, please subscribe. Or if you want to be notified the next time I put up a new Raid video, no idea when that might be, go ahead and subscribe for that. But it would be very much appreciated if you would like the video and leave a comment and share the video, because all of those interactions help the channel grow and the videos get more views. And I would like more people to see this video, not just for my own benefit, but because I think this is a really good speed tune comp that a lot of people would be able to use, that maybe you don't have 2 Maneaters, or you don't have the gear to put together some of the other teams. I mean, this one has some high gear requirements, so that maybe that's not as accessible, but you don't have 2 Maneaters, you don't have a Tower, or you don't have Helikath, or a lot of these other champions. This is something you could potentially put together. And yeah, as far as damage output, even without super duper high end gear, I was doing over 120 million damage on 1 key. Pretty damn good. So yeah, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know what you think of this comp. Do you think you'd want to try it out? Will you try it out? Would you if you could? Will you if you can? What DPS champions would you like to try in it? What are your favorite DPS champions? What are your favorite clan boss speed comps? All of that sort of stuff. I'd be interested in hearing about it. And again, share the video so more people can see this comp and help the channel grow and all that good stuff. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.